learning as behavioral change and how to actually do it. Today I want to share some thoughts that have really shaped how I view and how I think about learning. And over the past few years, I've been lucky to learn and take lots of time actually to deeply understand how some of the capital allocators and investors, business builders, and even hedge fund managers think about business and think about learning. One of my favorite is Alix Pasquet, and he's the managing partner at Prime Makaya Capital Management. And why Alix? I haven't found too many people on that level sharing their thoughts, ideas so openly. And that's obviously the reason why how I've been able to find his work, different conversations, lessons I've picked from dozens of presentations, old tweets, sometimes even the old blog posts which he has written. And he has said that he's very open now to share it all. It hasn't been always like this, but it brings immense value to his own world as well. I will cover it all in various reasons, how learning the right things and then sharing your thoughts can really do a wonderful thing in your life and for your career. So learning as behavioral change and how to actually do it. There's this idea I come back to again and again, and learning isn't real learning unless it changes your behavior. That's not a cute phrase, it's like a fundamental principle, because what most of us call learning is just consumption. We read things, you're listening this episode, then you pause, you stop, you move forward, and oftentimes you don't do anything with what you just learned. Maybe biggest thing you do is you just share with your friend, share with your partner that this is an interesting concept, but the question to ask from yourself is, did it change your behavior? And if it did, this is a big one. And that's the reason why I'm sharing this episode, because some of the things from here, it definitely changed my behavior. The biggest thing, we will cover that, is I'm 32 now, but when you hit 40, 45, 50, maintain just the energy levels you have today when you're a bit younger, it's going to be completely different. And it requires work to require the same energy levels you have today as a 20 or 30-year-old in your 40s, in your 50s, and take 60s, 70s, you have to work extremely hard to just maintain this energy level. That's fascinating. And this is stuff you can only learn from folks who are in their 40s, late 40s, turning 50. And this is where Alix is with his life. We read newsletters, we listen to smart podcasts, we write notes in the margins of books. And then a year later, when we revisit the same material, we realize nothing has actually changed in how we operate. The insight hasn't integrated, it hasn't shown up in our decisions, our processes, our judgment. It didn't shape us. And if it didn't shape us, did we actually learn it? Probably not. And now I'm trying to learn less things, but I'm taking them more seriously. The true enemy of learning is tension. Alix talks a lot about this idea. Tension is the enemy of learning. If you're under emotional strain, physical stress, or mental clutter, your ability to internalize new ideas is severely compromised. And most people never think about this. They treat learning like an intellectual activity, when in fact it's also a physical one. Ever notice how you suddenly understand something in the shower that you couldn't figure out 2 days ago? For me personally, this thing happens when I'm often playing with my kids, or we're doing our daily walk. Every single evening I'll go out and walk with my kids, and I have to have my phone with me. I'm not checking my phone, but there's some very interesting ideas which come to my mind. Oftentimes there are some tweet ideas, some ideas about the things we're working on, and I want to be sure that I have a place to take those notes. And at the same time, when I'm doing this podcast here, I don't have too many ideas because I'm busy, I'm doing things. So you need to have yourself this time and space when you're not doing anything or you're doing other things, and then you're just creating this surface of luck that those ideas which you maybe gathered before through reading, through podcast, they just come to you and they make much more sense. And important to understand, that's not random. The shower example, again, having a hot shower or being in a sauna, that's not random. The hot water relaxes you. The pressure is off, your body is calm, and your brain opens up. Learning happens when tension lifts, not before. That's why things like sleep, exercise, nutrition, and active recovery aren't just lifestyle habits. In the game, whether you're allocating capital, managing people, or solving complex problems, they're mental performance tools. They are edge if you do them. And if you don't do them, compared to those who do that, they have an edge over you. And this is a long game, and you might lose it because you're not doing those things. And this physical and emotional tension, it's the biggest threat to long-term learning. It's not intellectual, it's physical tension, emotional stress, the kind of wear and tear that builds up in your body and mind over time, slowly shutting down your ability to absorb new information. Alix also talked about peers, smart, successful, wealthy people who have quietly stopped adapting. They don't study new sectors. They don't short anymore. They avoid change. I'm talking about they don't short anymore. These are probably hedge fund people. But why? Not because they don't care, but because they're tired, their bodies hurt, they're overstressed. They haven't kept up with their new energy systems. So they default to comfort, to familiarity, to the old playbook. One of the saddest things, Alix said, is watching people who were once elite lose their edge because they didn't take care of their body. And Alix takes it very seriously. Massage, training, sleep, nutrition, mental reset, because it's not optional. It's not vanity. It's mandatory for staying sharp. Now, there are different forms of learning, and actually doing it right, learning needs community. We also tend to think of learning as a solo activity, but in practice, it's deeply relational. You need people to bounce ideas off. You need someone to say, that doesn't make sense. Try again. You need feedback loops, sparring partners, real conversations. This is why when I look at people who are still sharp after decades, they are never doing it alone. They have peer groups, mentors and mentees, personal learning partners, teaching platforms, live conversations. They're constantly testing their thinking out loud. That feedback is what sharpens the blade. And in my own case, I really miss this. Because I've had 2 kids. One is 6 months old. The other one turns 3. And it's been very busy 3 years. And I'm really missing this networking part and all that. But I've been supporting my better half. And hopefully very soon I'll be back to have those, to attending those dinners, to attending those masterminds, events. And I will definitely create my own because learning needs community. And some of the best ideas, some of the eye-opening things in my own career have come from other people after sharing my thoughts and ideas, and they've said X, Y, and Z, and this has been like, okay, I'll try that. So learning needs community. Alix also emphasized the idea of having a personal laboratory, a place where you don't just absorb ideas, but test them. That might be a side portfolio, a context sandbox, a classroom, a newsletter, even just a private Discord or Zoom group with 2 smart friends. You need a space where you can apply ideas before they hit the real world. Some allocators use writing this way. They write the memo about the position they're considering, not to publish it, but to see if their thinking holds up under pressure. Others run mock earnings calls with their team. Some practice pitching their short ideas in 60 seconds or less. The key is reps, exposure, reactions. And by doing that, the writing part, very simple. You put out a simple idea. You can do it through Twitter. Feel free to be anonymous. You can see right away how the world reacts. And if you don't want to do Twitter, it can be a newsletter. It can be just sharing ideas with folks close to you, because they will tell you really quickly, like, how does it does it make sense or it doesn't make sense? And you don't need a lot of people to learn deeply. Many will say that, but I don't have too many people. Well, you don't need to teach thousands of people or share your ideas to thousands of people. You need the right 7 people to pay attention. You could be writing a memo or teaching a framework every week. And if the right people are listening, it could change your career. One of them might want to fund your fund in the future. One might partner with you in a holding company. One might be the next Munger. This is why teaching is such an underrated lever. It creates long-term asymmetric upside, not just for your career, but for your thinking. This thing I'm doing right now, I will listen to this myself as well, because we as humans, we keep forgetting things. And 30 days from now, I already forgot what I said, but I just come back and I will just listen myself talking. You don't need too many people. You need those 7 people. And if they're right people listening, who knows? They will reach out to you, you become friends, you become business partners. And as I said, one might be the next Munger. Because the more you teach something, the more you understand it. And the more you understand it, the more you're forced to integrate it into your operating system. That's how behavioral change sticks. And this is exactly how many of the best capital allocators sharpen their edge. Take Howard Marks. He does it through memos. He teaches as he reflects. He explains complex ideas in plain language. And in doing so, he attracts talent, co-investors, and admiration from peers who are quietly learning alongside him. Take Dan McMurthy. He teaches through frameworks. He mentors younger operators. He shares ideas publicly, and he gets feedback from sharp people in his circle. That dialogue creates compounding loops. Or take Josh Wolf. Josh teaches by writing publicly, giving talks, and sharing frameworks about science and investing. He's developed like a language about how he sees the world. And in doing so, he attracts a tribe of people who see similarly or want to learn how to. None of these people are just being generous. They're sharpening their own thinking while building a flywheel around themselves. Show me a better way to do that. You just learn, you share something, you see how the world reacts. Oftentimes this brings some people, some ideas to you, and 1 + 1 could equal 3, very simply. And this is like a vicious cycle that works for you if you know how to use it. And you might think learning is just you gathering information, keeping it for yourself, thinking that it's your secret. Most of the time, it's not. And learning, the best way to learn actually is teaching. And teaching equals signal plus leverage plus depth. If you want a durable edge in any long-term game, take investing. Teach. Not because you have all the answers, but because it forces you to clarify your assumptions, confront your blind spots, and attract others who want to level up. And remember, you don't need a big platform. You don't need 1,000 followers. You just need a practice. You need these 7 people listening. Start small, host a reading group, write a private memo, publish a weekly post, share what you've learned from a call or from a book or a decision you made. You'll be surprised how fast the compounding kicks in and more people would like to interact with you. And as Alix said, this is the best. I love seeing young people do well with what I've taught them. But I also love when 5 years later, they'll call me with their best ideas. That's the reward. That's the loop. That's the learning in motion. And by teaching, what you already do is you're giving back in a good way. Because when you teach, you cement your own knowledge, you create leverage, you help many people at once, and you can attract talent and serendipity. It also gives you an excuse to reach out to people. Imagine emailing a guest speaker and saying, hey, I run a little discussion group for analysts. Want to drop by? Or like I do oftentimes, hey, I run this podcast called HoldCo Builders. Would you like to come and share your story? What's happening? 60-70% of people will say yes. And by doing that, you're not just sending another cold email, you're creating a platform. You're offering attention. Again, leverage. Let me give you like a few real-world examples that have stuck with me, and some of the best capital allocators, people like managing billions. And again, I'm taking this from Alix and what they teach consistently, not necessarily in a formal classroom, but through writing, speaking, and mentoring. Think of someone like Howard Marks. He's built an entire second brand through his memos. Each one is a teaching tool. He breaks down complex macro ideas into simple to understand insights. And in doing so, he's attracted an incredibly sophisticated audience. People read him not just because of his performance, but because they learn something useful. That attracts talent, partners, and co-investors. Or as I just mentioned, take Dan McMurtry, who openly shares frameworks on Twitter, mentors operators, and speaks on podcasts. Some of the best people in the industry have quietly learned from him and later collaborated with him. It all started with teaching. Here is the kicker. You don't need 100,000 followers to make it worth it. Remember, you need the 7 people to read your memo. Because the 7 people, there might be some crazy deal makers, capital allocators, partners, talent. You never know who's watching. A small group of right people consistently paying attention to your ideas over a long time is often all it takes to unlock extraordinary results. Teaching compounds, but only if you keep showing up. You don't get the benefits overnight, but you can start to build a reputation, a pattern, a signal. So if you've been thinking about sharing what you're learning, just start. Write a thread, host a reading group, give a talk at your local startup hub, reach out to someone and say, hey, want to learn this together? That's how it all begins. And that's how teaching changes your life and teaching changes your career. You want to create your own futsal field, the game within the game. If there's one learning model that's reshaped how I think about skill development, especially investing, it's this idea of futsal. For those unfamiliar, futsal is a variant of soccer. Same rules, smaller field, you've got fewer players, tighter space, and almost no time to think. What happens? More touches on the ball, more repetitions, faster decisions, sharper reactions, and because everything is condensed, you get better, faster. Now, how does it apply to investing or business or capital allocation? In the investing world, we often confuse learning with research, with reading, with listening. But learning only happens when you're exposed to consequences, when a rubber meets the road. And in that sense, futsal isn't just a game, it's a structure. It's a constrained environment designed to sharpen judgment and accelerate progress to reps, not just reflection. Here's what it looks like in practice. Futsal in investing and why futsal matters for allocators. This is an example from the hedge fund world. The biggest trap in your industry is the illusion of learning. Analysts can spend months building 60-page decks that never get read. PMs can get stuck in deep work loops that don't lead to action. What they lack isn't information, it's a feedback loop. Futsal injects speed, pressure, real stakes. One allocator I deeply admire trains junior team members with synthetic constraints. He'll say, pitch me a long idea, but it has to be under 500 million market cap, founder-led, under-followed, and you have 24 hours. It's like a chef giving you 3 ingredients and saying, make something world-class. The result, creativity, prioritization, efficiency. You learn what matters and you do it very fast. That pressure forces clarity. The analyst can't waffle. They have to prioritize. What really matters about this business? What's the single variable I should hang my hat on? After a few rounds, you'd be amazed how quickly they improve, not just in research speed, but in judgment, conviction, and self-awareness. And again, Alex said that. He told me once, I don't need people who can write 50 pages. I need people who can make one good decision in 50 minutes. And that's futsal. And every May, there is this Berkshire Hathaway meeting. And what is the example from Buffett? So if you zoom out, even Buffett's early career had a version of this. Think about the pinball machine business, the paper routes, the racetrack odds, the tiny investments. He was training the muscle of capital deployment in fast cycles. At the racetrack, you learn to bet small over and over. You develop odds intuition, pattern recognition, position sizing. You're seeing hundreds of decisions and outcomes within a short time horizon. That's not academic learning. That's, again, futsal. Now, let's say you start learning, you keep learning, and you end up building a really good network. You've developed your edge, you've got a strong start. Now, the real question becomes, can you stay good? Not just for a year or a cycle, but across decades. Because as Alix said, the graveyard of the investment world is full of people who were brilliant and then stopped learning. Not because they weren't capable, but because they lost curiosity or energy or humility or flexibility. The ones who stay, the ones who continue compounding year after year, they all have one thing in common. They adapt. They update their models. They reinvent their process. They stay open to the idea that what worked for the past 15 years might not work for the next 15 years. And this adaptability, it requires systems and people. Again, the network. It's not enough to want to keep learning. You need the right environment. And for this, Alix shared 3 critical ingredients. A learning network. You need a group of peers who push you thinking, people you trust, people who challenge you, people who will call you out when you're wrong and help you level up when you're right. A learning pod, as some call it. Alix just calls it friends. Another one is like a personal laboratory. I talked about this. Somewhere to experiment, a sandbox. A place to apply new framework in small ways and how you can do it safely. It might be a small portfolio, a newsletter, a student you're teaching. The point is, you're not just consuming information, you're testing it already. And if you take like where learning has a cost, it's like battle-tested fields. Another powerful idea from Alix and he shared was your cues from fields that punish error, where learning isn't optional. He studies, for example, the military, intelligence, construction and engineering, film directing and screenwriting, even the NFL 2-minute drill. Why he does it? Because in those domains, the consequences of bad thinking are immediate, tangible, sometimes fatal. There's no room for theory without execution. And that's where some of the best models of learning under pressure live. So if you want to upgrade your own system, study fields where failure costs something. Then port those systems into your investment practice. We also talked about how things, maybe you've been doing something for the past 15 years and now it has completely changed. So how do you handle regime change? Let's be blunt. We are living through a regime change. What worked in the last decade may not work now. Cost of capital is different. Globalization is shifting. The 1970s rhythm is getting louder. And even if you compare year 2010 to year 2025, a lot has changed. And Alix and a friend sat down for 12 hours to study the 1970s. Not just the macro charts, but the politics, the social fabric, the technology base, the market structure. And what they learned is this: history doesn't repeat, it rims. And the insight is usually in the difference, not the similarities. In the 1970s, China was less than 5% of global GDP. Today it's nearly 20%. In the 1970s, software didn't exist. Automation didn't exist. Today, those forces are dominant. So how do you prepare for regime shifts? You study history. You deconstruct your assumptions and you ask, what if everything I know is about to become obsolete? Then you act. You start learning again. And you might be thinking, oh, again, I've been doing it for so long. And so what keeps you learning in year 30? Alix said something else that really landed, I can say. The investors who survive for decades, they love the game. They don't want to do anything else. It's not just about money. It's not even about performance. It's about staying in the area. Because if you lose joy, you lose learning. And when you lose learning, you fall behind. So the real goal, not just alpha, but longevity, curiosity, energy. That's what lets you keep growing in decade 2, decade 3, and beyond. So that's what I wanted to share today. Some of the lessons that have stuck with me most when it comes to learning, and many of them has come from Alix. So if any of this resonated, I hope you'll take this one step today. You learn more, or you just start learning, because everything compounds, especially the learnings. So thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.